And we're back. It's another episode of Mets Prospective. He's Joe DeMayo. I'm Jacob Resnick. And Joe, let's get right to it with another Prospective retrospective. We've talked a lot recently about the prospects that have come up to the majors and filled the depth role for the Mets, guys like Colin Holderman, Nick Plummer, even Adonis Medina. And the latest in that group is Kahlil Lee, who recently came up from Syracuse and hit his first Major League home run against the Angels. Joe, it's been an interesting year for Lee thus far. What's your assessment of where he's at and kind of where would you place his ceiling as a Major Leaguer going forward?
Khalil Lee started the year off in AAA Syracuse struggling a bit, and the Mets sent him down to St. Lucie as a bit of a reset. Then he went back to Syracuse and simply raked when he got back, hitting mammoth home runs, showing the ability to play center field and right field in AAA, and obviously with the injuries, they were able to make room for him on the big league roster, and he hit his first big league home run, like you mentioned. And when you think about a long-term projection, I have him as the 7th ranked prospect in the system right now, and I still think it's more likely to be a 4th outfielder type of profile with some power and speed off the bench. But if he's able to find a way to improve that contact rate, as he still does strike out at a higher than average rate, if he could get that down, there still is, if you really squint, regular starting outfield upside.
We talked to Kahlil on the show last year, and he mentioned that he kind of had to gain a different perspective after getting sent down to AAA. And it was really actually Michael Conforto who kind of helped him go through that and view being in AAA as an opportunity to get back up to the majors rather than a punishment. And it seemed like he needed to kind of go through that mental adjustment again this year by taking some time in Port St. Lucie. It was a mental thing. It was also a physical thing. He added a leg kick and really helped him, like you mentioned, when he came back to Syracuse. And he's filling kind of the role that we expected for him now, kind of late game defensive replacement. Obviously, he's fast. We're seeing more stolen bases from him this year, showing off that speed and the power, like you mentioned. Saw it briefly in the major leagues and in AAA, and he's certainly going to be a guy that, like you said, has that potential to be an exciting player. Whether it's going to be an everyday player still remains to be seen. At the very least, should be a solid depth piece for the Mets going forward. Now, Joe, the Mets have always been an organization built around their pitching, and it seemed like in last year's draft, that was the directive once again, to stockpile these young arms. What's kind of your assessment been of those guys that are now pitching in their first full season in the organization and really providing some promise for the future?
So far, the results of pitchers from last year's draft have all been promising. I mean, Dominic Hamill is struggling a little bit in low A St. Lucie, but everyone else is performing really well. They drafted and signed 7 arms in the top 10 rounds of the draft last year. And much like you often hear talking about big league teams, you can never have enough pitching. The same exact applies for a minor league system. So the Mets are getting into a position in the 2022 Major League Baseball draft that's going to be happening next month, where they'll have 5 of the top 90 picks in the draft, and they're going to have the opportunity to add even more pitching to the system. And I imagine it's going to continue to be a focus. And, you have guys like Jacob deGrom, you have Max Scherzer, you have Chris Bassett, guys that are a little bit on the older end. So they're going to need some young pitching coming through the pipeline as, hopefully years down the road, those guys phase out. You have young guys ready to step in.
And one of those recently drafted pitchers who's been enjoying some success this season is Mike Vasil, who was the 8th round pick last summer out of the University of Virginia. Started his season in low A St. Lucie and has made his way up to high A Brooklyn. And we had a chance to catch up with Mike this week.
We've heard about some adjustments that they've made to your repertoire and things once you got to pro ball. What specific changes have you made since joining the Mets?
Some very specific changes that we've made is especially kind of within my delivery. Overall, we've tried to make it a little more athletic, a little more into my back hip and driving down the mound in a little bit of a different way. And in terms of timing, basically trying to time up my mechanics in a way to make everything a little more fluid. Be able to hold velocity longer through outings, higher velocity overall, and just have the overall stuff be better. And I think those changes have really, really helped. And I think shown in a lot of ways throughout the season, which I'm happy about, because at first when you try something new, it's always a little bit off or feels a little bit weird. But I think after a while, it's really helped.
What's the biggest thing you've been focused on improving on so far this year? You obviously talked about some mechanical adjustments and things, but what's on the top of your list of things you're trying to improve?
First and foremost, just being a consistent pitcher, but also being a consistent starting pitcher overall. I think that's like really, really important to me, because consistency is one, key in baseball, but two, overall, it really kind of shows that you're able to maintain your stuff, your velocity, your outings, and success overall. And I think for me, is being a consistent starting pitcher is what's really, really important. And I feel like there's obviously been times, a couple outings here and there, where it hasn't gone the way I wanted to, but I feel like at the end of the day, the way I've responded or what I've learned from those outings is really huge in helping me stay consistent. So I think overarching goal for me this season would definitely be that.
The Mets are actually a unique organization, having a minor league affiliate that's in the same city as the big league team. It's not really something that's common throughout baseball. Have you spent much time in New York City before? And if not, what are you most excited to do in the city?
I remember since a young age, I've always loved New York City. The skyline, even just the size overall, it's always been the thing to me that kind of gives me goosebumps when I look at it. And that's what I love. And when I found out that I was going to Brooklyn, I was really, really excited, because growing up through high school, I went to high school in the city. Basically, my whole life has been revolved around the city, and that's what I really, really love. And that's something to me that really, I think, has shaped me as a human being. And there's no better city to be in now, and in New York City, in my opinion, it's probably top city in the country.
Who were some of your favorite pitchers growing up that maybe you modeled your game after?
At a younger age, when I really started to learn how to pitch more, and I really started taking pitching seriously, I would say like Justin Verlander, when I watched when I was younger, just through those Detroit years. And then as I got older, obviously there was I love the way that kind of Garrett Cole works on the mound, and his mechanics and everything. And I've never really been comped to a certain player or told to pitch a certain way, but I always remember the passion and fire that Max Scherzer pitched with as well when I was younger. It was just, I don't know if I've ever been the type of guy to be on that level or learned how to get myself to that level, but I just remember like the competitive fire and wanting to win as bad as he does. I think those three guys right there, I think obviously some top three pitchers in the game. But as I was growing up, really loved them, righties, taller guys, and just great stuff overall.
Thanks so much to Mike Vasil for joining us this week. And let's get right into our Stock Watch segment. I want to give some love to Josh Hedges, one of the more unique pitchers in the organization, throwing from a full submarine slot. But his fastball, even though it tops out in the mid to high 80s, he's been one of the best pitchers in the entire organization this season, coming out of the Binghamton bullpen. And he was an undrafted free agent back in 2019 out of Johns Hopkins. He made it up to Brooklyn that summer. I got to talk to him quite a bit, and he's really one of the smartest pitchers that you'll ever talk to. Really knows the pitch design, the analytics really well. And his big thing coming into 2022 was adding a rising slider, which if you think about how a pitcher traditionally throws a slider, it comes over the top, and he imparts top spin on the ball. That's what makes it break down, and it still has that horizontal component. Because he throws from a submarine slot, he actually imparts backspin, kind of like a fastball, and that's what makes the pitch rise, but it still has that break. It's kind of like what Tyler Rogers of the San Francisco Giants throws, and that's who Hedges been modeling his game after as a submarine pitcher. And with the way Hedges been trending, he could potentially be a major league option for the Mets at some point, kind of like Rogers is for the Giants, as a different look, a guy who's going to come with a different arm slot than the rest of the pitchers on the staff. So Josh Hedges has been excellent this season, and we'll look forward to how he progresses going forward. All right, Joe, what about you? Who do you have?
I'm going to keep the pitching train rolling, and I'm going to go with Dedniel Nunez, who the Mets at one point had him as a top 15 prospect in their system. They left him unprotected for the Rule 5 draft, and after the 2020 season, the San Francisco Giants actually picked Nunez in the Rule 5 draft, and he was having a fantastic spring training and was in line to probably make the Giants opening day roster. And then he went and had Tommy John surgery, missed the whole season, and with a 40-man roster crunch, the Giants returned Nunez to the Mets this past offseason, and he kind of finished up his rehab, and he's just coming back. He's made a handful of appearances, and he's up at AA Binghamton, and he could be a guy that it wouldn't shock me if you saw him make the major leagues at some point this year as a bullpen option. He's a fastball that sits 95 to 97. He's touching 99 miles an hour, and this is post Tommy John surgery, so his velocity is back to what it was pre-Tommy John. And he's got a slider that's an above average pitch, not a plus pitch, but he'll get some swings and misses on it. He was originally a starter. Now he's being converted into a full-time reliever. And with that power stuff, I think he's a guy that you certainly can see him before this season ends.
And that's going to do it for us this week. For Joe DeMayo, I'm Jacob Resnick. See you next time on Mets Prospective.
See the Mets of tomorrow play today. The Brooklyn Cyclones play baseball on the beach all summer long. Visit brooklyncyclones.com/tickets.